everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Behind Your Eyes. And with me is Valerie Rubin. And thank you so much, Valerie, for being here. And if you could introduce yourself to our viewers, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. It's so awesome to connect with you. It's been amazing. My name is Valerie Rubin. I'm a rapid transformational therapist, certified hypnotherapist, and anxiety mindset coach.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Thank you.
Well, I always start the series off with a sincere, how are you doing?
I am doing really, really wonderful. I'm just so grateful to be on here, be on this episode, and just so grateful to be connecting with you on a deeper level today.
Thank you, thank you. And how have you experienced like these last 2 years with COVID, and has that affected you in any way mentally?
Yeah, at the beginning of COVID, it was very scary for, me and everyone mentally, as everyone didn't know what was going on. And I had different plans and opportunities to go to Australia and different things like that. And with COVID, that didn't happen. So that did affect me mentally. I think everyone, really at the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of fear, right? Because there's just so much unknown to what was going on. But I just kept moving forward, and it really helped me connect deeper to myself, as there wasn't as many outside distractions with COVID and everyone being here. So for me, it was really almost like a blessing, because I got to really connect with myself deeper and heal and on a deeper level, to where I don't think I would have been without the pandemic and not much going on.
Yeah, you're basically like forced to look inward a bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. I had the same. And also, did you notice that like here in like the news is quite fear-based and not very fact-based? Did that like affect you, or did you just not watch the news? Or
So I try not to watch the news as much. I always try and be informed and things like that. And at first I was watching the news, but I just had to make an informed decision that this just wasn't helping me progress further on my own mental health journey. And, I had to be present with myself, and
yeah,
feeling like watching the news just made me feel more in fear, and it just
yeah,
wasn't adding more benefit to my life
yeah,
personally.
exactly.
So that's kind of how I managed that situation.
Yeah. And from what I understand, you had been diagnosed with like general anxiety disorder. Could you tell me a bit more about that and how you overcame it?
Yeah, so years and years ago, I think around when I was like 14, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I feel like I really overcame it from a mix of different tools. I was doing talk therapy, medication at one point, meditation, yoga, exercising, journaling. I was doing all the things. But what really, really helped me get out of the anxiety loop was really doing rapid transformational therapy. I discovered rapid transformational therapy online, and I was studying my degree in psychology at the time. And I was like, oh, wow, like I never heard of this before.
Mm.
And it really helped me get to the core wounds of like why this anxiety was really showing up on a subconscious level. So
Yeah,
that was what really helped me overcome it, as well as like feeling a lot of the repressed emotions that I needed to release and feel. As
yeah,
in society, we are told, not to cry. There are so many messages
yeah,
around surrounding mental health, anxiety, and I had to really, release a lot of emotion. And
yeah.
that like really, and just being gentle and kind with myself, just
Being like vulnerable as well, right?
yeah, definitely. Being like vulnerability is a huge key value of mine.
Yeah,
As if you're not able to be vulnerable, it'll make a huge difference in your life. And there are so
yeah,
many reasons, why people aren't vulnerable, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah,
But like if I had to say like the top three things that, helped me overcome anxiety, is just to allow myself to cry.
yeah,
Um, rapid transformational therapy, and really just being kind and gentle to myself.
Yeah. Allow yourself to feel the negative feelings, I think, as well.
Always, because if we don't, release those negative feelings, they'll just come back even stronger.
Yeah.
And so, we gotta go into the dark to feel the light.
Definitely. And I think you're like a true example of making your message, like helping others overcome anxiety. And what would you advise, like someone who's watching now who's still dealing with that?
Yeah, I would honestly say, like, I know it might be hard with financial things, but like get help, because we aren't meant to walk this journey alone. And there's so many also messages in society around mental health, like, just try and do everything on your own, and but that, like, sometimes we need that extra support, especially if we're experiencing anxiety, like on the daily. There's something that needs to be released and let go, and I think with the proper tools and support and people who've been there, I think it's really, really helpful. That would be like my like top advice, I would say.
Yeah, a strong like basis, a strong community around you.
Yeah, definitely.
And you've mentioned in your Facebook group, like Freedom from Anxiety, that what you resist persists. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, of course. I love this question. So basically, for example, like if you are feeling very sad or you feel very anxious, and you're resisting those feelings, you're just distracting yourself from feeling those feelings, you're overworking, maybe you're coping with external things like drugs or alcohol. Sometimes we don't know other ways to cope, so we cope with it that way. What we resist, like, we're resisting the anxiety, we're resisting the sad feelings we are experiencing, and then it'll just persist as soon as that coping mechanism is over, whether that's distracting yourself with overworking, drugs, alcohol, etc. And sometimes we aren't shown and we don't know the proper tools, and that's why receiving support and getting help is the first step for sure.
Yeah, like you said, like dealing with that negativity that you feel and allowing yourself to feel all that.
Yeah,
I think that's really the key, because we're all always told, like, be happy, put on your happy face, and like forget about all the negativity that's going on, just smile, life is good. And that can sometimes be more harmful than helpful.
Yes, I agree 100%. A lot of the time, people say like positive vibes only, like things like that, and that's not helpful for someone who may be struggling, and just having that having someone even on the internet showing that they're vulnerable or sharing their story can be really like almost life-saving, because they're like, wow, like look at them being vulnerable. This shows that I can be vulnerable and feel my feelings as well.
And that is totally fine and acceptable to do. And do you have any like favorite like self-care rituals when you still feel like a sense of overwhelm?
Yeah, what a great question. So some things that I like to do when I'm overwhelmed is either listen to my hypnosis recordings that my RTT therapists make for me, or journaling, just writing down everything on how I feel. Meditation, it's been a great tool for me to really allow myself to feel into what's happening in my body and in my mind, just letting things come up. Things that I do when I'm overwhelmed is, going to therapy. I still go to talk therapy, things like that, really, taking care of our mind and our body. And I think those are some really top things that I do when I'm overwhelmed, or talking to, a supportive family member or friend.
And as like someone who is online or visible a lot, does that like put any pressure on you, or do you feel any negative effects of that?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say that sometimes there is a little bit of added pressure to show up perfectly, right? But also, I also believe that like people don't want someone on the internet who's just perfect and just showing their just happy moments. And that's why I share a lot about my story and things that I've gone through on the internet, because it really shows people a lot of hope from where I've been to where I'm at now. you know, I think that's really important, is to be vulnerable, to be real, to be
Yeah.
raw, you know, and I feel like a lot of the time it's, for the most part, it's been more positive for me, is it's been a very, like, it's been an outlet for me to share my truth, share my vulnerabilities. And for the most part, you know, it helps a ton of people, and it's like that portal for me to help clients, you know, and it's just a huge blessing.
Yeah.
So,
Because do
yeah.
you think like social media usually portrays quite like this perfect image?
Mhm.
Does that add any more pressure, do you think, like to society in general?
Yes, I think it adds so much pressure onto a ton of people, and sometimes myself as well, you know, like, oh, I don't feel very great mentally, and like, you know, the ego
Yeah.
and your mind come up with all these stories of like,
Yeah.
you know, who are you to share what you're, you know, what's going on in your life, and you know,
Yeah.
share anxiety tips if you're struggling one day. And it's like, you know,
Right.
people need that vulnerability, and sometimes, you know, your story, and to share what's on your heart,
Yeah.
because they could be going through a similar thing, and they might want guidance as well.
Yeah.
But I think especially social media can, you know, keeping this false perfect image, I think, can be really harmful, especially to like teens and young kids, because they
Yeah.
don't know any different. Their brains are still developing, and I think that
Yeah.
can be a huge contributor to a lot of more mental health
Yeah.
struggles.
Yeah. I think also like that little voice in your head, that's like, who are you to think, you know, you can post this, or do you have all the skills needed? And you know,
Hmm.
that negative
Yeah.
voice is always like lingering,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that can also like add more pressure to like, okay, should I paint a more perfect picture, or is it okay to show myself as I am, like flaws and all?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
sometimes hard to find that balance, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100% agree.
And I think like hopefully with this, it's, you know, I show people it's okay to be yourself fully, like with your flaws, and everyone has them.
Yeah, yeah, especially with my work as a rapid transformational therapist and coach and hypnotherapist, etc. It's funny because we all think that we're alone going
Yeah.
through this struggle, and we're all my clients have thought the same thoughts about themselves, and
Yeah.
it's almost like a beautiful experience in the fact that like we aren't ever alone. Someone's
Right.
always going through something that maybe you are going through, and maybe it's a different experience, but everyone has gone through darkness. Everyone has felt, you know, sad and lonely, etc.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just allowing, you know, and being gentle with yourself, allowing those things to come through, I think is so important.
Yeah.
And, you know, our mind likes to say that like we're alone going through whatever we're going through, but really
Yeah,
we're not alone at all.
definitely. I agree totally.
Mhm.
And you mentioned, you know, this having an effect like social media and that perfect picture that it mostly has on like young, like teenagers or even younger kids. And I think like, especially in school, there should be like a topic or something that is more on mental health. And like, do you agree with that? Or is there like a topic that you think should be taught at school?
Ooh, I love this question. I think it is so important that schools talk about mental health more.
Hmm.
I think it's so important because we aren't taught, you know, how to feel our feelings, especially if
Yeah,
we haven't came from a supportive, loving
exactly.
parents. And I think school should be used as a supportive tool to help people. And a lot of the time it
Yeah,
isn't. And I think
exactly.
having mental health support, not just, you know, having a counselor, but being taught how to process emotions, being
Yeah,
taught, you know, different tools to use if you're in a dark place, or, you know, like what to do when you're overwhelmed, how to prepare for test anxiety, for example. Like
yeah,
so many things, life would be completely different if we
yeah,
had that being taught. And I'm a big proponent in the subconscious mind, And, you know, a lot of what I teach and what I guide people, and one of the tools that I use is in rapid transformational therapy and in my work, is getting to the subconscious mind and working with the subconscious, because the subconscious mind, you know, runs 95% of our day. So I would love to, you know, that if that was being shown in schools and being taught, the power of your subconscious mind, the power of your words, the power of it, and how you can rewire it and change it.
Oh my gosh, yes, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times also when kids like go through these emotions or feelings, that the teachers, they think they're helping, but they're actually making it even worse. And so I'm like, okay, you have to teach them how to regulate their emotions and feel their feelings, and not say, oh, you'll be all right, and or even punish them for feeling their feelings, you know? Oh yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, completely. Especially in the classroom, you know, young children, they don't know how to express their feelings, so they'll externalize it or get very angry or be disruptive in the class. And that's a problem because they don't know how to regulate their emotions. And that's something that, you know, they really need support on. And like some of my clients have had a lot of trauma just from in the classroom, things that their teachers have said. So if someone out there is listening to this and they're a teacher or working with children, like be very careful with the words that you tell them, because
even the actions you do, if you approach someone in a very like strict way, or even like almost dangerous way, I can say, that feels very overwhelming for a kid. And you have to be very mindful and careful of how you approach a kid when they're going through something.
Oh, yes, I agree 100%. You just got to be gentle and kind, because you have no clue, you know, what's going on behind closed doors.
Yeah, and like look at what they're going through at home, like what the basis is of what they're feeling. And maybe it could be a trauma or something, but don't expect like, oh, like what's wrong with this kid, but ask yourself like what has happened to this kid that they're acting this way.
Exactly. And like there's always a why behind someone's actions. There's always a why that needs
figure out the why.
Figure out the why. Like why is this child or teenager disrupting class? Why is this behavior showing up in the first place?
Exactly. Yeah. And what advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, what a beautiful question. What advice I would give to my younger self is to embrace your uniqueness. Embrace your uniqueness, embrace your vulnerabilities, embrace yourself, and be kind to yourself. And that you're always loved and everything is always working out exactly the way it's supposed to be, best case scenario. And you know, it might not look, you know, what you may not feel great at the moment, but it's going to get better, and you're going to help so many people.
Awesome. And what is the best advice that you were given yourself?
Ooh, what a great question. The best advice I've ever given from myself is so something that really has helped me on my, you know, mental health journey is knowing that I'm always guided, right? Like I believe in like higher powers, and you know that there's something else out there always guiding me, whether that's ancestors, angels, guides, the universe, you know, etc. The best advice I've been ever given is that they're always protecting me and guiding me and keeping me safe. And for me, that's just been reflected in my life, and that really shifted so many things for me. So that was like the best advice I think I've like ever gotten.
Yeah, that's great. I believe in the same. I'm very much like attached to thinking that like there are energies like around me, maybe the universe that always has its best interest for me. Yeah,
always.
Definitely. And is there something that you're still struggling with, like mentally, despite overcoming everything you have overcome?
Yeah, I would say, you know, breakups can be hard. You know, I would say that is something that I've been, you know, currently growing through, is really accepting a last breakup, and just working my feelings through that, you know, and just allowing it to, you know, unfold and happen, and accept those feelings of, you know, sadness and, you
Yeah.
know, things like that. I think that is something I'm currently growing through, is, you know,
Yeah.
a last breakup that happened recently, and just accepting that, you know, we both had, you know, so much love for each other. It just
Yeah.
didn't work out. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's nice that you say that you're not going through it, but growing through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Slightly
our,
different. Yeah.
yeah, our language is so important to how we view things. And, you know,
Yeah.
instead, you know, some people will say, I'm suffering with X,
Yeah.
and, you know, really saying I'm growing through X, like I'm
Yeah.
growing through depression, or I'm growing through anxiety, I'm growing through a breakup, you know.
Yeah.
But that would definitely be something I'm currently working through.
And what are you most proud of?
Ooh, I would say I'm really most proud of how far I've come on an emotional, mental level, really overcoming chronic pain, and starting a business to help people with the same struggles I've help
Yeah.
people with. I had chronic pain for 6 years of my life, and I thought at this point I would be in a wheelchair, and now I'm completely pain free. And it's
Wow.
such a beautiful blessing to be on this other side and work through
Yeah.
a lot of traumas, and now getting to help people with the same thing is such a beautiful honor. You know, is
Yeah.
sometimes anxiety and chronic pain go hand in hand. So I think
Yeah.
it's a very beautiful journey. So that's, I would say those are the most things I'm proud of, those two things.
Yeah. How did you get past the chronic pain? That's quite intense.
Yeah. So really, I didn't realize that the anxiety was contributing it. I did lots of different things. I switched up my diet, and that was helpful, but
Mhm.
it didn't get rid of all of it. Really, the chronic pain for me was really like releasing a lot of suppressed trauma and suppressed
Mm.
feelings, and allowing myself to feel emotions. Like, as simple as that sounds, that's really like the biggest contributor to me letting the chronic pain go and feeling better, was really allowing myself to feel my feelings and let them go, as that was just something so big for me. And it was like a
Yeah.
cumulative thing. The more I did it, the more I let go, the
Yeah.
more it subsided, and the more I felt calm and safe in my body as I healed
Yeah.
through anxiety. It just was a natural progression, and I'm just so grateful.
Yeah. How did you make the connection that like the anxiety is actually contributing to the pain, or is like the biggest factor of the pain?
Yeah, what a great question. So I kind of found out from the anxiety, and how I kind of figured out that that was a big contributing factor, was because like I was getting treatment for the anxiety through a rapid transformational therapist. And as I was doing that, you know, as we were working through it more and more, the chronic pain was subsiding along with the anxiety. So
Yeah.
as the anxiety went down, so did the chronic pain. So that's how I really knew it was a contributing factor. Because
Yeah.
like, you know, I was doing all the right things on an anti-inflammatory diet, exercising,
Yeah.
doing all the right things. But, you know, if your mind isn't healthy, your body isn't going to be either.
Yeah. So we're just connecting the dots like, okay, this is why I'm in pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My final question is, when are you at your happiest?
Ooh, what a great question. Honestly, when am I at my happiness is when am I at my happiest? I would say, like, honestly, talking to one of my best friends, Nick, we have just such a deep soul connection, and we just bond so deeply, and we have such deep connections and deep vulnerabilities, deep talks. I think really anyone who I have a deep talk with, and sharing so much that's on our hearts, I think just having those connections with people and
Yeah.
really makes me feel the happiest, when I get to connect with like-minded people and share my truth and feel loved for just being who I am.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for joining me here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suzanne. It was such an honor to be interviewed on this and share a little bit more about my story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.